You're out of time now. Moving to Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very unusually, I am disappointed in one of you, but I am completely appalled by the other. So, Mayor Khan, in January, I asked if we had grooming gangs in London. You dismissed my question by saying you didn't know what I meant. What does she mean, Chair? What is she talking about? I have to tell you, the rape victims knew exactly what I was talking about, and actually so did most other people. So would you like to apologise to all those victims of the rape gangs that actually saw you dismiss this?
Well, Chair, I'd like to begin these topics by always thinking about the victims and survivors who've been treated appallingly over many, many years, particularly in the northern towns, and what they want is two things. One is support, and it's very important we give them support, and I'll set out shortly some of the support we've given to victims of violence and sexual exploitation. But secondly, justice to be done as well, which is incredibly important. And I've led efforts to strengthen the protection of children and those women exploited by abuse and exploitation.
Yeah, can you just issue an apology to those rape victims that...
The session moved sharply in tone as Assembly Member Hall took the floor, immediately expressing frustration and anger. She stated that while disappointment was directed at one individual, she was completely appalled by the mayor's conduct. Referring back to a question she had raised in January, Hall reminded the chamber that she had asked whether grooming gangs existed in London. She accused the mayor of dismissing her question at the time by claiming he did not understand what she meant, a response she said deeply hurt victims of sexual abuse who knew exactly what was being discussed.
Since phone me, I can't tell you how many people have contacted me. Would you just like to apologise to them for pretending you didn't know what these rape gangs were?
It is really important. We're talking about an incredibly serious and emotive issue to actually clarify what is meant when it comes to grooming gangs, or in the words of the member, rape gangs. According to the National Grooming Inquiry, there are a number of things that are meant by this. They include intrafamilial abuse. They include parent-peer abuse.
Okay, you're not doing yourself any favours here, Mayor Khan. Everybody knows what I was talking about, except you, it would appear. And since you're the Police and Crime Commission, that's very embarrassing for you. I didn't stop asking questions. I asked your Deputy Mayor and never, ever got an answer, of course, from her. In the meantime, Yvette Cooper was asking all police forces in Britain to identify cases, because obviously she realised what they were and that they were around, and it's a project called Operation Beacon Port. And in June, Yvette Cooper announced that more than 800 cases had been identified, and she expected that number to go up. But on June the 19th, you said, "I choose my words carefully."
Hall pressed the mayor to issue an apology, saying that rape victims had contacted her directly, devastated by what they perceived as a public dismissal of their experiences. She argued that while the mayor may have claimed confusion, victims and the wider public understood the meaning clearly. For Hall, the issue was not semantics but recognition, and she said the mayor's reaction had compounded the trauma of those who had already been ignored or failed by authorities for years.
There are no reported cases and also no indication of the grooming gangs that she is concerned about. She is always me, obviously, is concerned about in London. Were you not concerned about this, Mayor Khan? Because at that point, somebody must have explained to you what they were.
Well, it's because of my concern about this issue that I asked the HMI to come in and look into the Met Police Service's ability to protect our children. It's because of my concern about people being exploited sexually that the Met Police Service embedded all the recommendations made by HMI and has a child-first approach. We've had tens of thousands of officers and staff trained on this very issue, but our strong partnership has meant 3 times as many cases have now been solved by the Met Police Service than before, and we've funded not just record amounts to tackle violence against women and girls, but we've funded a violence and exploitation support service.
You're not doing very well on this, though, are you?
Crime.
You haven't apologised yet, unless I've missed that. On the 1st of July, you tell the London Assembly none of the cases mentioned by Cooper are in London. You said, "I have no indication of them being in London, but the MPS understands the importance of checking for the reasons that she knows." So you're still in July From January not appearing or admitting that you know what they are, in July still saying that there aren't any. And then, of course, the Met submits 197 cases to the National Crime Agency as part of Cooper's review. And then on the 24th of October...
The Mayor responded by stating that discussions around such sensitive issues must always begin with victims and survivors. He emphasised that sexual exploitation and abuse had caused immense harm over many years, particularly in parts of the country outside London. According to the Mayor, victims consistently want two things: meaningful support and justice. He highlighted efforts made under his leadership to strengthen protections for children and women and stressed that tackling abuse had been a long-standing priority.
You a letter revealing that 9,000 cases will be reviewed following the expansion of the number of cases examined. Clearly, there is an issue in London, which is what I asked you about in January. Had you in January just said, yes, it's a dreadful thing, we're looking into it, I would have accepted that and asked the police further. But you didn't. You pretended you didn't know what it was. The rape victims have phoned me. They are devastated that they have been ignored, many of them by the police for years, and I'll come on to Samark in a minute. Many of them have been ignored, but to have the Mayor of London actually really take the mickey out of them by saying, I don't know what you mean, what is she talking about? You knew damn well what I was talking about. Can I ask you one thing, and perhaps you'll give me a straight answer here, and do think about the answer. When you were an MP, were you made aware of any such cases in your area then?
Just because I care about victims, that I appointed the first ever independent victims commissioner in London. It's because I care about victims.
You have to answer the questions, not go off on a tangent.
Assembly Member Hall rejected this response, insisting that the Mayor still had not apologised. She argued that his explanation avoided the central issue, his refusal earlier in the year to acknowledge what grooming gangs were. She said that as Police and Crime Commissioner, the Mayor's claimed lack of understanding was embarrassing and deeply concerning. Hall added that she had also raised the issue with the Deputy Mayor but had received no response, further reinforcing her belief that the issue was being avoided.
Were you aware of any of such cases in your area when you were an MP? Yes or no?
Can I just... I'm going to interrupt here. Look, we might have got an answer if we allowed him to finish.
Yes, and we're on the clock, Chair.
And we're on the clock. But that's the nature of the question and answer session.
Not if it's a yes or no.
Can we allow the Mayor, all I'm saying, can we allow the Mayor to complete his answers, and then you can even make your point further again if you feel they're unanswered?
It's because of my experience as both a Member of Parliament but also a lawyer dealing with victims and survivors that we've invested more than £232 million supporting the victims of violence against women and girls. By the way, the previous Mayor invested £27 million in his...
Just concentrate on yourself. Were you aware in your area of any of these gangs? I'm asking for a specific reason. Obviously, I want a yes or a no out of you. Were you aware or not?
It's because of my experience as a Member of Parliament and as a lawyer that I've invested so much in supporting victims. It's the victims and survivors where my priority has been, which is why I asked the HMI to look into whether the Met Police was doing what they possibly
I'm going to
could.
ask the Commissioner because he answers properly. He answers questions.
So at this point, can I just intervene?
Hall then referenced national developments, noting that Home Secretary Yvette Cooper had launched Operation Beacon Port, instructing police forces across the country to identify group-based sexual exploitation cases. By June, more than 800 cases had been identified nationally, with expectations that the number would rise. Hall pointed out that despite this, the Mayor had publicly stated in June and again in July that there were no indications of such cases in London, a position she said no longer aligned with emerging evidence.
Because I've been advised by the Commissioner who wishes to make a statement.
Okay,
I'm prepared to take the statement, but we won't be on the clock for the statement. It's a short statement that he wishes to make. So can we stop the clock at this point and allow the Commissioner to make his statement, and then we'll begin to ask your questions back on the clock.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it might help to put some facts on the table. Obviously, we discussed child exploitation at this committee and elsewhere several times over the last few years. As you know, CSE was the reason the Met was placed in Engage and had accelerated cause for concern from the Inspectorate a few years ago, because we were failing victims and didn't identify it effectively, and we let children down. As we look back and the work that we're doing at the moment, we will find more failings, including cases where victims were disbelieved or investigations were inadequate. Any sexual offending against children is abhorrent, whether online, familial or committed by others. It's insidious and devastating, with a profound and lasting effect. Group-based offending, including that characterised publicly as grooming gangs, is one awful example of the many horrific abuse methods. The look back is part of a national audit being coordinated by the National Crime Agency and Police Chiefs Council.
The Mayor defended his approach by explaining that his concern over child sexual exploitation had led him to request inspections of the Metropolitan Police by HM Inspectorate. He said these inspections revealed serious failures and led to reforms, including a child-first policing approach and extensive officer training. He stated that partnerships and reforms have resulted in significantly more cases being identified and addressed than in previous years, alongside record funding for tackling violence against women and girls.
Over the summer, but Phase 2 now is the formal start of national audits and builds on Phase 1, and it will run for several years. The first stage will complete by April next year. This requires each force to identify and undertake an initial assessment of any group-based cases where there's been a sexual offence involving 2 or more suspects and at least 1 victim. That's the ICSA definition. And in these cases, where they've resulted in no further action by the police or Crown Prosecution Service. These assessments are simply a triage designed to ensure any subsequent investigation activities focused on the right cases. This definition of group-based offending, I should stress, is beyond that characterised as grooming gangs and includes intrafamilial cases, institutional-based abuse, peer-on-peer abuse cases and others. This definition and a first cut research across our database suggested there might be 9,000 cases potentially in scope over 15 years. And that's the update I provided to the Mayor a few weeks ago, which has led to some unbalanced reports.
Hall remained unconvinced, arguing that despite repeated opportunities, the Mayor had still not acknowledged the existence of the issue in London at the time she first raised it. She highlighted that the Metropolitan Police later submitted 197 cases to the National Crime Agency as part of the National Review, and that a subsequent letter revealed up to 9,000 cases could be reviewed following an expanded audit. For Hall, this demonstrated that the issue she raised in January was real and serious, not hypothetical.
Inferring this means 9,000 cases of grooming gangs, which clearly and explicitly the letter said it did not. The letter was clear on these points. It is important for us to use precise language and consider its impact on victims and public understanding. So, for example, that data-led search of 9,000, as we start to work through them, we find that some of those don't actually fit, when you look in detail, don't actually fit the specification. So already having looked through 2,200, only 1,200 are in scope. So that 9,000 number will come down as we work our way through that. And then we'll be looking for the ones where there's been nobody prosecuted and where there's potential opportunities for further investigations. We've got 26 officers dedicated to these assessments, which is about 20%, about a fifth of our specialist child exploitation teams. And that's sort of indicative of just this assessment phase creating stretch in the organisation.
The exchange became increasingly tense as Hall accused the Mayor of failing victims by refusing to answer direct question about his past awareness of such cases while serving as a Member of Parliament. She demanded a clear yes or no answer, arguing that accountability required honesty. The Mayor attempted to broaden his response, referencing his professional background and investment in victim support services, but Hall repeatedly interrupted, saying he was avoiding the question.
So, to be absolutely clear, this assessment will rule out some of the initial 9,000, but I would expect the final work with the National Crime Agency to possibly identify maybe 2,000 or 3,000 cases where no one was charged and there are missed or new investigative opportunities, or suspects may still pose a risk. And I stress again, that number, though, will include, and it will straddle, online, interfamilial, institutional, and peer-on-peer cases, as well as those characterised as grooming gangs. The resourcing of this, without damaging today's work, will require the extra funding that Casey recommended. As well as looking back, it's worth mentioning current cases. Each month, the Met records around 2,000 sexual offences. Around half of those are child sexual abuse cases across all types. Around a third of those are flagged initially as potentially exploitative.
At this point, The chair intervened to restore order and allow the Metropolitan Police Commissioner to make a statement. The Commissioner explained that child sexual exploitation had been a key reason the Met had previously been placed under enhanced monitoring. He acknowledged historic failures, including cases where victims were disbelieved or investigations were inadequate. He stressed that all forms of child sexual abuse were abhorrent and that group-based offending, sometimes described publicly as grooming gangs, was one of many forms of abuse being examined.